communities are supporting each other and helping each other get free and thrive. Get thriving.
Get thriving.
Yeah.
Eh. Hi, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Dr. Kia, and this is the Ratchet Roundtable podcast,
where we explore the defiant, irreverent, unapologetic ways that everyday folks get free
and thrive. This podcast is about how people can use ratchetness as a technology for thriving and liberation.
This is born out of many conversations we've had, both thinking about ratchet within our own dynamic, and you'll see some moments, I think, on the podcast where we're like, it's like a fix your face moment. We'll get into respectability later, but
there are journeys.
There are there are journeys. That's a great way of putting it. But then also the ways that seeing ratchet externally from us can really, to your point, be a technology for thriving, for getting free. Because these are, as they call them, unprecedented times. And I think unprecedented times call for ratchet measures. So, which we've seen plenty of on local levels, on, defying authority, authoritarianism,
You saw the YNs stole a tank.
They got into the tank! Yes! Like, the YNs stole a tank in Memphis. Ratchet, right? Like, and that is required for us to get free. Like, us being within a compliant box is not going to do it. It's not going to do it for us. It's not going to do it for any other species on this planet. It's not going to do it for the people that we love. Like, thinking about these things, I think, is a requirement for the futures that we want to build. So that's another big aspect of why Ratchet Roundtable.
Yes. When we first started thinking about this podcast and imagining it, it was grounded in conversations we were having about living and trying to figure out how to thrive and where we were seeing models. And one of those models is actually out of my research. So we decided to take these conversations online and build out a podcast that's about how people use ratchetness as a technology for thriving and liberation. My Bridge to Thriving framework is grounded in research, right, on thriving and flourishing and well-being and human development, and in a lot of ways reflects that research. However, when we center people who have been pushed to society's margins, we start to see these ratchet ways of being. So in order to thrive, there's defiance. In order to thrive, there's development of critical consciousness. It's called a Bridge to Thriving framework because it lives in this both and space where it recognizes that when you're marginalized, there's a lot conspiring against you and against your thriving. And our communities, whether they be Black or Indigenous or queer and or women and so on, our communities have not only imagined beyond their current conditions to create increased opportunities for thriving, either for themselves or for the future communities. And they have pulled energy back. So we can spend a lot of energy on survival. We can spend a lot of energy on reacting and responding. And we do have to spend some energy on that. We have to intervene. And the more we've created coalition, the more we've created common purpose and community, the more energy we've pulled back for designing for the world we actually want to see. And so the first dimension is community. And of course, that's like what we represent to each other as well. Aaron, do you want to say anything about community and thriving?
Yeah, I mean, because we've been friends since the beginning of 2019. And were introduced through a mutual friend, and we immediately hit it off, but also were like, how do we get free? Like, we here, we black, we queer. How do we get free? How do we and not only from, I mean, not only from the people that you've introduced me to in terms of their research, but also through your research, it's helped me kind of understand, okay, there are models, excuse me, there are aspects of thriving. And one of the things that we're hoping to talk about is some of those models that we just talk about in our everyday, whether it's folks getting ratchet up in their government's parliaments, whether it's, folks that are instigating really beautiful community-based change on the ground in their local environments, etc. And then also just like what we mean to each other in this pandemic scene, like it's I think, yeah, that's all I got to say for now. But yeah, community definitely resonating heavily with me as one of those aspects of thriving.
Yeah, and we've definitely anchored each other through some really hard times. And then brought each other into community with other folks, and also used, as you said, examples from outside of our world of ways that communities are supporting each other and helping each other get free and thrive. Get
Get
thriving.
three, get thriving.
Thrive. Yeah.
Eh.
Yeah. So there's the piece that's about us, the we, but then there's the piece that's about people individually and selfhood, specifically, the sort of coming home to yourself, the anchoring into your true authentic identity. So when we're thriving, we're often sort of unapologetically and in a holistic way in this work of being and becoming at the same time. And the more people have an integrated identity, the more people are anchored into themselves, the more likely they are to be able to thrive. And that has an effect on community as well. So yeah, selfhood has a relationship to community, because the more that we are able to self-actualize and be authentically in our sense of self and our purpose and our path, the more likely we are to be able to contribute to a healthy community. And the more likely the community is to reflect back to us an encouragement of, us being and existing together. Okay, what do you want to say about self-love?
Girl, listen, I'm thinking about a couple things. One, just the conversations we've had around being in corporatized spaces, the ways that we can't always it either we are not always allowed to be free in the ways that honor the selfhood that
Yeah.
we embody, and that also who we're trying to become outside of a position, right? Outside of careerist aspirations, shall we
Mhm.
say, uh, and the ways that, we've talked about showing up with our full authenticity has oftentimes been demonized. It hasn't been welcome. Uh, um, it's been met with something other than embracing,
Mhm.
and having to, I think, particularly as like neurospicy people, having to
Mhm.
navigate like, damn, like, all right, this place says be you. We're gonna honor all of you. This is the best place to work for everybody, right? Um, and when we're like, okay, well, here I am. This is your mission. Breathing life into it. Oh, you don't want me to do that. You want me to comply. Got it. Doesn't sound like selfhood, but eventually, I think us having our own journeys about learning what it is in these spaces that don't always welcome selfhood has been it's been enlightening, to say the
Yeah.
least. So
Yeah, and actually I'm so glad you mentioned that, because in a lot of ways thriving is aspirational. So we know this, and my framework is a both and framework, and I was going to talk about that a little bit later. We know that we're in a context where people are not only not able to thrive at all times, but have forces acting on purpose against their thriving constantly. And that is where a firm sense of your own value, your inherent intrinsic dignity and value, can protect you. And we know that developing that and maintaining that requires a community that sees you authentically and that sort of reflects you back to yourself in an asset-based way. So
Yes.
when we're in these workplaces that hate us,
Yep.
well, if we're going to survive those, it's often because we have people either there or outside of there who are holding us up and
Absolutely.
helping us find the resilience to stick with it or to keep moving forward. And that's not good enough forever, right? So part of the aspiration is to say we can identify these things as challenges and dream beyond them
Yep.
and design beyond them, right?
Which is exactly what these institutions, many of them, don't want you to do.
For a whole host
Unfortunately.
of reasons. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, they don't, and
We could be talking forever about
I know we can talk about that, but this actually is good because that is tied in a lot of ways to capitalism, and I think where people get lost in the concept of abundance. So the third framework dimension is abundance, and that's not actually about amassing a lot of financial wealth. A lot of people think abundance, and it's like, oh, I've got my money, and it's a very individualistic and kind of extractive way of engaging in the world. When we talk about abundance tied to thriving, certainly there's a piece of it that's about sufficiency, which is you are resourced, right? And abundance is so much bigger than that. It is imagination, it's possibility, it's expansiveness. And when we talk about ratchetness, we're in the space of imagination there. We're in the space of refusal. We're in the space of truth telling, even the truth that people want to like sweep under the rug, they want to hide from, they want to, keep out of view. So abundance in the context of thriving is actually, I think, one of the best places to anchor into it is to think about how little kids move through and understand and imagine the world. And the other place where abundance, I think, is most easily located is in kind of queer, creative, and imaginative spaces, especially Black and Indigenous queer, creative, and imaginative spaces. And that's the abundance we're talking about with thriving.
A clip I saw on Instagram was of these dancers, presumably of like some kind of dance troupe. They had like some kind of toddler that they were kind of like, there was music and they were like dancing to what the toddler was doing. You may have sent it to me.
Or
Did you
you may
send
have
this to
sent it
me?
to me.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, word. And how,
They're mimicking everything the toddler does.
Yeah, whatever the toddler is doing, if he's like, okay, I'm wiggling my butt up in the air, then they're all down on fours, like wiggle my butt in the air, and like, kind of like this, when he gets up and starts to run, kind of, like off kilter, they're mimicking those movements because there's a freedom in them that I saw that was about that abundance. Like, I'm going to take up the space I'm going to take up because that's all I know, and I think there's something about the ways that over time we get kind of fit into these neat little boxes that restrict our abundance and our ability. I mean, I was about to say simply be, but I know you won't get to that in a little bit. But just thinking about, okay, like I wanna jam like this. I wanna move my body like this. I think there's a reclaiming that I was thinking about with regards to that. That some of our youngest consumers could be some of our biggest teachers type B, and it looks like it was for the dance troupe. So
yes, I think there is something really powerful about having all of the uh, ability and mastery and agency tied to being older and letting a young person be the guide or the teacher or the model, and really privileging and prioritizing their wisdom and their guidance. That actually, I think, if we could do that as a society, I think we'd heal a lot and we'd be setting the stage for a much more vibrant, thriving future. So much, we were
yes.
talking about this just yesterday, that
Mm-hmm.
so much of the pain that's being externalized, we're being subjected to right now,
Mm-hmm.
is tied to a failure to be accountable to children and a failure to let children be accountable in safe ways as
Mm-hmm.
learners, as
Mm-hmm.
developing humans, instead of being punitive towards young people when they make mistakes. And this ties into the respectability conversation, which is related to ratchetness later.
Yep.
Yeah, we won't belabor it. There's so much more.
Yeah.
Fourth dimension is pleasure, and I feel like you touched on that with the dance class. And not just pleasure in the sense of play and joyfulness, and whether that means like listening to music or making art or being out in nature or whatever, but also pleasure that is stigmatized and punished. So when we enter communities that are cast to the margins, we allow for the full sort of expression of and possibility of same gender love, and the fact that fat people have sex and orgasms, and that sort of thing. So it's pleasure in the broadest sense, in the most dynamic sense. When if you think about that, when a person is not allowed to be their full self, then they're not thriving, right? So there's this way that we need to be our full selves, but in particular, again, there's this wisdom in the ways we were before we were constrained by society, ourselves small. And so play is a technology of thriving, and play is a technology of liberation. And so it's a key piece of the pleasure dimension.
Yes. I'm thinking about the ways that I'm thinking about everything from enjoying nature as a source of pleasure, and thinking about the ways that our national parks have been defunded. They've been stripped of resources, which really allows people to, because going back to the capitalism piece, there's a lot of ways you can get to a national park for free. I haven't been to a national park in a long time. I think that, but they make it really accessible generally for people to enjoy and experience pleasure that is right here. Like that nature just, it was like, here you go. And I even think about like on Instagram, because, I'll be on social media. We be on social media. We be sharing things with each other. But I don't know if I'd share with you there was a clip of like a bear that was just sitting, I think, like next to like the little water,
easing
and it was just, like,
out on a lake.
Yeah, like, so also thinking about the ways that like other animals experience pleasure, and that pleasure is something that should be afforded to all of us. So yeah, everything from nature to kink communities, and the ways that people exploring their sexuality, and the ways that they get free from that standpoint are policed. The ways that certain bodies are policed, the ways that feminine bodies are policed over social media, female bodies, I guess more specifically. But yeah, I love that that's like a call out. It's like, how do we increase our access to pleasure as a fundamental thing of thriving?
I'm glad that you mentioned kink, because I think in that ecosystem, you have a combination of certainly pursuing pleasure, but also often as a source of healing. And so that brings us to the next dimension, which is relief. And also being in nature. We have scientific evidence that being out in open green space is good for you at a cellular mitochondrial level, right? Like, this is a healing thing that you can do. So when we acknowledge that there is going to be pain and difficulty in life no matter what, and there is so much that's being manufactured in the interests of greed and extraction. And just, I think that's a function of people being so disconnected from their spirits and hating themselves so much that they're just pushing that pain out into the world. So relief is critical, because people need places and spaces and conditions and contexts where they can put stuff down, be free from stressors and difficulties, come to understand who they are more clearly, because there's so much that gets in the way of that. That's the fifth dimension. And then back to the bear and simply being.
Yeah.
This actually is a this lets us kind of forecast to one of our guests, which is Bayo Komolafe, talking about how one of the things that gets in the way of us as humans is this false idea that we're not of nature, that we're not animals, that we're not, that we are somehow better or different or separate from the world.
The world, yep.
In a special way, which we're not. And I was thinking about the bear sitting by the water, just sort of existing and gazing out and having a moment of stillness, and full sort of embodied existence.
Yeah.
And when I, in my research, in just popular discourse, when people talk about what they're dreaming about and casting toward, in relationship to what's difficult, they're often talking about wanting to be able to simply be, to just exist in the fullness of who they are, without somebody coming in and being like, you're doing that wrong, or you're not supposed to be that, or da 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 da. And so simply being is the sixth dimension of the thriving framework, both because it can feel like thriving in a moment, and because it's something for us to design toward the conditions where more and more people can exist in their fullness. That's why thriving and ratchetness are connected, because without ratchetness, thriving is probably not possible in this current world, in these current conditions. And we're seeing it all over the planet, movement all over the planet.
Absolutely. I also want to add that briefly that being ratchet requires risk. There's no risk-free way to be ratchet. I mean, and also that in the United States in particular, being ratchet is a politic that has been we have to acknowledge that Black women have always moved ratchet forward, right? We're going to get into the scholarship and just, in
our article.
In the article, yep. But what comes to mind in terms of just real life examples of I'm thinking about Harriet Tubman. I'm thinking about the Combahee River Collective and Bernice Johnson Reagan and just the ways that they were being defiant, to your point, with regards to the moment, to create spaciousness not only for themselves but also for their communities. So yeah, I'm hoping to get more into that too.
Yes, and we see it in blues. We see it across multiple generations, absolutely. And we do get into that. We're hoping to have some of the people who have really dug into this on the podcast as well, just to talk about this. I'm Doechii, right? Megan Thee Stallion,
yes.
Right? Beyonce. Like, we have these ways that Black women have anchored a deployment of ratchetness. Tamar Braxton.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Deployment of ratchetness that has been liberatory in some ways, empowering in some ways, and a blueprint, right?
Yes.
Or blueprints. And right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we would like to speak with Theory Pickens, Bettina Love, Brittany Cooper, Robin Boylorn, Nikki Lane, Stephanie Tolliver, Andre Brock Jr., Aria Halliday, Ashley Payne, Teresa Irene Gonzalez, Nicole West. We would speak with Katrina Overby, Jenny Plattenberg. These are the folks who are really bringing this stuff to life. Mariah Johnson, and there's so many others. So, if we could, we would absolutely welcome these brilliant scholars. We would also love to speak to Doechii.
Yes, Doechii. We have, oh my God.
Italian, please.
Cardi B,
please. Beyonce, please. Yeah.
Glorilla, come on.
Yes. And Miss Piggy.
Yes. Oh my God, 1,000%. LH Stallings, yes. Adrienne Marie Brown,
yes.
Alexis Pauline Gumbs.
Yes.
There's a
Marisha.
Yeah. Yes. Miriam Kaba.
Yes. Yes.
I'm thinking, of course, like Black and brown women, period, right? And I'm even thinking about, because I think there's an aspect of the relief that you're talking about and how we do that in community that are really going to be important for the fellas. I'm thinking about Joel Leon. I'm thinking about musicians. I'm thinking about Serpent with Feet. I think I might have sent you his album. I'm thinking about Destin Conrad. I'm
Mhm.
thinking about, and then also the imagine conversations we would have with people. What would it be like to, like, if Luther was still around? What would it be like to talk to Luther Vandross, right?
Yeah.
You
James
know,
Baldwin.
or James Baldwin, right? Langston Hughes. What would it look like to talk to these people who have really thought deeply about an imagined world that they didn't necessarily? And I think that's part of it, right? We're always imagining worlds that we're not necessarily going to be able to reap the full fruits from.
Mhm.
Um, but have also, we gotta name their contributions, both
And
past and continued. But
I'm glad that you mentioned men because we do have these really beautiful conversations with Tez Files and Ed
yeah,
Brockenbrough, where we touch on a lot of this, like the thriving in real time, moments of thriving in real time, and what
yeah,
we're imagining for the future, through the lens of what it's like as men to be in this world, as Black men to be in this world. Um, we talk a little bit about abolition. We talk about selfhood with Angel Acosta. You know, we've got some dope. Oh,
got it.
we talk about
You know,
Rasquache.
last watching
You know,
Dr. Jose,
Dante
who grew up, who I
Nicaragua.
think is non-binary, but grew up in Latino boyhood, right? What does that look like? Yeah,
Yep.
I'm excited about these conversations. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
I
gonna be a
love it.
dope ass season.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we just really want to invite people to imagine uh, possibility and be inspired by the models that already exist. So, because I think that that can be a source of profound hope and energy. Times are fucked up. We have to fight. We have to fight for ourselves, but we also really have to fight for our children and a future, right? And a future worth having. So we need those models. We need to be imaginative together. We need to have this space where we're being abundant, you know, and re refueling each other, refueling our spirits, feeling affirmed, feeling anchored, so that we can keep it up because it's worth it. We're worth it. So
With that.
conversations, models, an article where we're going to dig much more deeply into ratchetness as a phenomenon, as a concept, and as a methodology. And yeah, probably some face journeys and some shenanigans and some foolishness.
They will all ensue.
Yes.
Excited. I'm excited. Really.
Yay. So that's it. That's Ratchet Roundtable. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy season one and everything that's to come.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in.